What exactly is the secret to building great products? You would be right in saying it is product management. We believe it is a combination of product thinking and a mindset. Join us on Venturis Stories as we demystify this through conversations with industry leaders. This is the Venturis Stories with your hosts, Gaurav and Arjun. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Venturis Stories. So, in today's episode, we will continue our theme on telecom. For those of you who tuned into our last episode, you will know that last month was the big month for everybody in telecommunications with the industry show Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And no surprise, AI was the big buzz in the show this time. The key themes were AI, autonomous systems, value creation. So we figured we'll stay with our telecom theme and talk to somebody else focused on telecom. And we are delighted to be joined by Kaitki Agarwal today. She was actually at the show. She is co-founder and president at A5G Networks, and we're delighted to have her to talk to us about AI in telecom and other things that she gathered from MWC. I have known Ketki for over 15 years now, dating back to the time that we spent together at Starring Networks. Since then, Ketki's been a serial entrepreneur and a pioneer in what he has been doing. With that, actually, Ketki, rather than me go and talk about you, I would rather just turn it over to you and let's maybe get started with a brief introduction and your career and highs and lows.
Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast and for the warm intro. I have been in the telecom industry for quite some time, and uh, I'm not tired of envisioning the potential of telecom and the networking, especially now with AI in telecom and, of course, autonomous networks. That's where my current venture is focusing on, and our vision is to enable autonomous network of networks with AI native mobile networking. So that's an area that's very close to what we are doing, what my current venture is doing, and um, just to give you a bit of my career journey. I was born and brought up in the northern part of India, and uh, my dad's job was basically requiring him to relocate to a different city every few years. So in that process, uh, there were times where I have very few educational resources to the extent that most of the teaching was done under the tree. And,
Mm. Wow.
that allowed me to be a self learner.
Mm.
And that way I became more independent and adaptable. So I am an avid reader. I remember that when I was a kid, I used to hide the book under the blanket and reading in the flashlight in the night or
Wow.
even at
That's
the dinner table. So I basically love reading. That's what I have been doing, and that's what some of my posts that you have seen are based on the readings I have been doing or the audiobooks I have been listening to.
Mhm.
So, just fast forward to my career. I started my career mostly in the US, actually. I worked in India only for a year after coming out of the college. So, I moved to the US, and that's where I started my career. I wanted to uh, focus in technology and specifically mobile technology. I loved and enjoyed networking, connectivity, and how large networks are deployed, how they are operated, what technologies are used in communication. So that's where I focused in most of my career journey. And later on in my career, I felt just being a technologist is limiting. And that's when I wanted to broaden my perspective. and add more tools, so to say, in my toolbox. And that's when I pursued MBA. It was a great decision in my career because it made me interact with people with different perspective and background.
Mhm.
So more than learning from the case studies and teachers, I learned a lot by interacting with my classmates. So I
Mhm.
think learning from practical experience is what I value more than any classroom studies. And that's what I would like to that's what I would like to communicate to the listeners, that
Mhm.
networking, connections, relationships, they are going to help you more in business and life, and
Mhm.
try to get as much practical experience you can get by talking to people, by asking good questions. So uh, that's how I would close my career journey discussion. And my low was my senior year of high school, with some family issues and financial challenges. I had to work hard to get the admission in the engineering college while dealing with some of those challenges. So, as you know, in India, it's very competitive to get in any good engineering college. So, that was my low. But since then, I learned how to make any low a high. So,
Mhm.
I from that point onwards, I don't think there's any moment I would consider a low. I'm in general a self-motivating person. So
Mhm.
as a leader, I try to remember that I am an influencer and motivator for my team
Mhm.
and keep the positive energy going.
Fantastic, Kaitki. I mean, it's inspiring to hear you talk about this. And by the way, you and Peter Thiel have probably a similar kind of anecdote that experience is your best teacher. So the
Mhm.
more you experience, the more you learn, and rather than just reading books and having more of a bookish knowledge, so to speak. But I just want to jump shift your conversation from your say childhood and early years to your current venture, which is A5G. Perhaps you can help us understand what you mean by network of networks, and getting beyond automation and going to autonomous networks or AI-led networks. Perhaps some thoughts onto where your current venture is headed and what you're doing there.
Yeah, sure. So our networks of today are walled gardens. They're basically that walled garden network is trapping or limiting the innovation in terms of business model, monetization, and bringing the uh, and it in a way blocks the efficiencies that we can bring in the value chain as the world is changing around it, how we are deploying the systems, how we are defining the software elements, how we are modularizing the software. All those changes are bringing the change or shift in the value chain. So, how we can monetize and bring efficiencies by using those changes that are happening in the value chain is very difficult because our networks are closed. So, in simple terms, if you look at what is kept in the closed networks today, is essentially the lot of good data, and how we distribute the networking functions is also kind of kept captive in those closed walled garden networks. So we have to make our networks more open from networking point of view. In this process, like how we are managing, how we locate different network functions, how we secure data, where the data should be living, where we want the data to be to make the best uh, use out of it, is changing significantly. And of course, the volume of data is increasing significantly.
So,
So,
if I can just ask,
yeah,
interrupt there.
sure.
A lot of our listeners are not mobile experts. So, can you
Mhm.
share an example of what that means in terms of uh, disseminating data or making data more transparent and more usable, how would that kind of translate? And what should, say, an average enterprise look at, or the service provider look at, or whatever the customer segments or the engagement segments are?
Take an example of the mobile network. Mobile network data is managed by the mobile operator, and it's like whether it's handset data or whether it's any data coming from the radio network or packet core network or uh, any other function in the network, all that data is mostly owned by the mobile operators. Now, with private networks or any other new types of networks, let's say they are being deployed by enterprises, or they may be deployed by government or uh, the city authorities, right? So
Mhm.
that data is not necessarily owned by operators, or enterprises don't want operators to own that data. So
Mhm.
how do we manage the security of that data, and how for mobile services or for any type of services for that, all this data that is living in silos,
Mhm.
and uh, it's being used by enterprises. How do we uh, how do we manage that data? How do we manage it in terms of the enterprises? How do we manage it in terms of the mobile operator network? Is where the real value is hiding, and that's what we are trying to enable at A5G.
Yeah, maybe let me jump in. I think
Mhm.
in the interest of keeping it, we like to say one thing
Yeah, yeah.
about our podcast, that it's not a TikTok, not a documentary either.
Mhm,
Keep it at the 10,000 foot level. Maybe what we can do is going back to MWC actually. So
yeah, sure.
since what you talk about is autonomous networks, AI in telecom, and all of this were the big themes
Mhm, mhm.
at the show, and you had a lot of very exciting announcements and partnerships that you announced. You were at the show, so maybe for us and our listeners, if you could share a bit about the buzz around AI in telecom and your key takeaways and announcements from MWC.
Sure. Yeah, I think as you know, MWC AI was making the big waves in almost everything, and uh, AI in telecom is something that I was expecting will be a topic that is going to be talked about a lot, and that was the case. So that's why we were focusing as A5G, we were focusing a lot on how to enable AI in telecom. We did actually multiple demonstrations and showcase the functionality of how to use AI in telecom with several of our partners. And we demonstrated machine learning in the like in traffic steering to offload the video traffic to SmartNIC, and in another demo we showcased how we can use it in the control plane to save on handsets battery, for example. So we will do the network optimizations using machine learning, and that optimization in turn will save the handset battery. So
Hmm.
those were some of the demonstrations we did at MWC. And one of the important aspects I would like to point out, and that was also visible at MWC, was that the ecosystem, infrastructure, compute, and tools to enable machine learning in all the aspects of telecom are there now. So, and
Hmm.
that's helpful because it helps us realize the use cases uh, and do the innovation where we want to do the innovation. So it's nothing that is blocking us to realize our vision. And that's very important from a startup point of view, because a lot of time what happens is technology is not ready. And when technology is not ready, we cannot realize our vision. We cannot uh, show the use case that is really going to transform the network, for example. So that is not the case, and that allows us to bring AI in our product to showcase how it can transform the network by enabling the AI native networking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to shift some gears and move it slightly away from a technology-led discussion to what
Mhm.
we like talking about is also about a product-level thinking, right? So, and you have done a few startups before, and this is your third or fourth startup, I guess. To turn the discussion around product thinking, and I have this kind of way of kind of framing it, is that there's an idea or an ideation part. There's a narrative that you build the narrative on. Say the idea has a narrative, and then you execute. So those are the
Mhm.
three prongs of how you can take a startup to, I guess, bring it to life as well as scale it up. So when you look at your previous, startups and now the present one, how do you think about addressing customer problems and the customer problems that you face today and create net new business value? And what's your perspective today from idea to narrative to execution? How does that frame for you?
So um, I think it's iterative process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that there is a problem, you see it and you solve it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it, you're done, and you go from the product launch to growth mode. It's very iterative process. It's
Sure.
basically, you know a problem, you see a problem, and you understand that problem that you're seeing, that multiple customers, in our case mobile network operators or enterprises, are trying to solve. And in lot of cases, customers want to realize a use case, but they don't really um, understand all the aspects of how to realize that use case or how to solve the problem. And that's where you have to be in some way consultant to them to help them understand the problem first and then give them the solution. If you start with the solution while they have not understood the problem, is not going to work. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time, what happens is it's more like relationship building and also consulting and bringing them on the same page where they see the problem, they understand the problem. At that time, they're like more like eye-opening experience for them, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when they start buying into the solution. That slowly then you can introduce the solution. See, this is the problem and these are the steps to get to a viable solution, and these are the areas where it's going to give you this much, like, let's say, return on investment, and that's how you will eventually make money in turn, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to show them the big picture, not just the problem and the solution, but how mm, they will like once they deploy, let's say, our software in their network, how they will bring it to profitability. Eventually they have to um, uh, uh, get return on their investment, whatever investment they are making, and buying the software. Like, for example, in the private network, if they make some investment, what is the advantage it's going to bring in terms of what is the business value it's bringing for them. So you have to kind of lay out all the like all that uh, detail for them in terms of business value, in terms of technology value, not just the short term but also the long term. Sometimes what happens is customers don't see the long term value, and then they are hesitant in investing in just the short term. Basically, the short term just gets killed at that point because they are not seeing the long term advantage to it. So you have to basically understand whether to sell the long term vision first or the long term whether to show them or make them realize the long-term problem first or the short-term problem first. So it's very different depending on the customer and depending on the problem they're trying to solve.
Uh, yeah, totally agree. I think focusing on the problem rather than jump to the solution makes sense. I was actually going to ask you about the third pillar of product thinking, iterative approach. You already alluded to that, so I won't necessarily go into that. I will actually shift gears and jump to one of the things that we like to ask our guests is any recommendations in terms of, I know you mentioned you have always been an avid reader, so is there a favorite book, podcast, something that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. I have several favorite books actually. So I would call out some of the interesting books I have read and learned a lot from. So I enjoyed reading books from Clayton Christensen, like Innovator's Dilemma, Innovator's Solution, and Seeing What's Next. I would recommend reading all these three books together because they're kind of a series, kind of connected examples one after another. And the thing I liked about those books is the way he suggested to create the framework and think within that framework is really enlightening. And that basically changes you from a learner to a problem solver.
Mhm,
So it's not that you are just learning and doing what he's saying in
mhm,
his example and trying to solve a problem. It allows you to create a framework to solve a problem yourself. So that was one of the important takeaway from that book. Another book I would like to call out is Michael Dell's book Play Nice But Win. It significantly influenced, I would say, in my startup journey and what I did in my second venture. So that was a great book. And currently, I'm listening to Leadership by John C. Maxwell.
mhm.
As you know, I have a long pending list of books I want to read. So I'll keep you posted as I read, and of course, I will share it on LinkedIn.
So, I'm going to connect some dots. You talked about Christensen, and in terms of Christensen to present day, of what you posted on adaptability with Nit Noria, 30 years ago. Noria's writing right now. Um, and you raise this point about adaptability and this concept of adaptability. And within that, there's a whole discussion on what we call contextual intelligence. So Gaurav and I always, talk about this, and we coined this term called FAME, which is focus, adaptability, mojo, and engagement. And there are different things, of course, but I'm trying to connect these things from contextual intelligence and adaptability. And I just wanted to get your thoughts around how you see this, how you see your journey, your company's journey, how you see your employees and teams, how you motivate them. How does this adaptability come into real life, and what do you do to make it better?
So I think the route to adaptability, in my opinion, is asking good questions. So I always encourage, or I myself follow that as well, asking good questions. Like, it's always good to have the childlike curiosity and
Mhm,
build your opinion based on that collected information. That basically allows you to come to a conclusion without any bias or
mhm,
prejudice. And
mhm,
that's why I promote asking questions and keeping an open mind to possibilities. So if you have an open mind, then you can do the right reasoning. You can basically make the decision based on the inputs you're collecting, not based on some predefined information and perception that you may already have in your mind. And the reason why I say that it is the root of adaptability is because if you are learning from asking questions, from your open-mindedness, then only you can be more adaptable. Then only you
Mhm.
can adjust to the changing situations. So for me, I would say asking questions and being curious is they are two most important things.
Yep, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I like how you connected that to adaptability. I'm reading this book, Mindset, right now, and one of the things it's not a quote from the book, but I came across LinkedIn about uh, embracing the embarrassment of being a learner is the secret to having a growth mindset. So I think what you said about have the curiosity, ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. That's how you grow your mindset open to possibilities. So really makes sense, and that makes sense that it's kind of the key to adaptability. So one last question, shifting gears again before we let you go. Recently saw your announcement on LinkedIn about you being included in Intel's startup program powering the innovation to scale coffee table book. So that congratulations on that. Anything you would like to share with us and our listeners about that?
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. So that's a great program, and as you know, it's good to see the different types of resources available to startups like us, and that really helps a lot. And we are really thrilled to be a part of Intel's startup program. We have been working with Intel since last few years as part of the Intel Network Builder program as well as Smart Edge program, and recently joined this new program for startups. This also represents, actually, this startup program is driven by Intel India, and
Mhm,
this also represents the startup movement happening in India. And as you
mhm.
know, most of our team is based in India. So, with that, it's a great program to be a part of, where our teams in India can um take advantage of that and work closely with our partners.
Yep. Yeah, and that was great to see. Both Arjun and I are also very passionate about the startup ecosystem in India and finding a way to get engaged and give back all the years that we have picked up what we think is differentiated product thinking. Thanks, Ketki, for the discussion, your insights, and wonderful dialogue. This was great. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Gaurav.
Kaitki.
Thanks, Arjun. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for having me on the podcast.